Dear colleagues and distinguished guests, I hope you and your families are doing well and in good health. I am delighted to be hosting this UNWTO webinar on women of the Middle East and tourism in 60 minutes. It is my pleasure to see that many of you from the public, private, diplomatic sectors and the academia have joined us. I join you today representing the World Tourism Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations with a mandate to promote tourism as a driver of economic growth, inclusive development, and environmental sustainability. As you may know, Sustainable Development Goal 5, SDG 5, or Global Goal 5, concerns on achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls, and is fifth of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals established by the United Nations in 2015. It refers to the state of equal ease of access to resources and opportunities, regardless of gender, including economic participation and resources and opportunities, regardless of gender, including economic participation and decision-making, and the state of valuing different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally, regardless of it's a man or a woman. Working towards gender equality and promoting opportunities for women's empowerment in the sector is key that mandate, and we are pleased to see so many of you connected to today as we zoom in on the Middle East region. Today's webinar follows our research and work for the UNWTO regional report on women in tourism, which was published in 2020 with the support and collaboration of the Ministry of Tourism in Saudi Arabia to mark the Saudi presidency of the G20 at that time. The regional report is a complementary report to the second edition of the Global Report on Women in Tourism, which UNWTO published in 2019 in collaboration with UN Women, GIZ, the World Bank, and Amadeus. The Middle East report examines the specific opportunities and challenges that exist for women in the region across 5 thematic areas, which are considered key for women's empowerment: employment, entrepreneurship, education and training, leadership, decision and policy making, community. The report highlights the proportion of women engaged with the tourism sector is low, at 8% of the workforce, compared to 54% at a global level, and finds that women's employment is constrained by the sector's poor image, working conditions, relatively low pay, perceived lack of career prospects, laws that restrict women's mobility, and the disproportionately high burden of domestic unpaid care work, with women doing 4 to 6 times more than men, higher than any other world region. We believe that now the current percentage is above the 8%, and we hope that it will improve, especially that some progress towards gender equality in the sector has been observed, particularly in the public sector, where concrete policy actions have begun to bear fruit, and the representation of women in leadership roles has increased towards similar levels seen globally. For example, in 2019, 21% of the region's tourism ministers were women, compared to 23% around the world. In addition, rates of women in tertiary education in the region are relatively high, with UNESCO data showing that between 47% to 71% of new students are women at a national level across the different member states. However, as the report notes, these successes in education have not translated to overall increases in women's participation in the tourism sector. In light of the challenges faced by women in the Middle East, UNWTO is committed to working with our member states to implement the report's recommendations and facilitate an increase in women's participation in tourism. In particular, UNWTO is currently preparing a pilot program that aims to boost opportunities for women's empowerment during the sector's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, in partnership with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation, and UN Women. Under the program, one National Tourism Administration, 10 businesses, and 4 NGOs will work hand in hand with UNWTO to implement an individual action plan for gender equality over the coming year. These individual action plans will be rooted in the recommendations of the report and provide direct training for women affected by the pandemic, increase the visibility of tourism as an attractive career choice for women, and implement gender-sensitive governance systems in the sector. In the Middle East, the UNWTO is delighted to be piloting the program with our colleagues in the Kingdom of Jordan, and we hope to expand to other countries of the region in the future. So this briefing was about UNWTO's recent activities related to the subject of our webinar today, which we will discuss in more details with our distinguished moderator and panelists. Ms. Ghada Jaha, the UNWTO consultant who prepared the report and the regional gender expert in the Middle East, Dr. Nashwa Talat, advisor to the Minister of Tourism and Antiquities for Sustainable Tourism Affairs in the Arab Republic of Egypt, Ms. Ansam Malkawi, advisor to the Minister of Tourism and Antiquities in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Ms. Abir Abu Suleiman, the first female licensed tour guide in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I would like to also give a special thanks to our colleague, Ms. Marina Diotaleve, the head of Ethics, Culture, and Social Responsibility Department in UNWTO, and her team for the support and continuous coordination to publish the report on women in tourism in the Middle East and in organizing this webinar. Unfortunately, she was not able to attend with us today. So thank you, Marina, and your team. I would like to inform you also that during the webinar, the UNWTO team is sharing useful links in the chat section that are related to the UNWTO report in tourism. Now I give the virtual floor to Ms. Ghada Jaha. Ghada, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Basma. And thanks for those introductory remarks. And good morning and good afternoon to our audience, depending where you are joining from. I'm pleased to be moderating today's webinar on Women of the Middle East in Tourism in 60 Minutes and sharing this platform with our distinguished panelists. Just to briefly underscore why tourism matters for gender equality and women's empowerment, not only in the Middle East, but globally. Tourism has long been viewed as an engine of women's economic empowerment. More than other sectors in the economy, tourism can provide more opportunities for women's participation in the labor force, in entrepreneurship, and in women's leadership. As such, the tourism sector can make important contributions to the achievement of Sustainable Goal 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as to the gender-related targets in other sustainable goal areas. Today's webinar will focus on highlighting some of the key factors that have or can contribute to gender equality and women's empowerment in tourism in the Middle East. We will also be looking at some of the key challenges to gender equality and women's empowerment in the sector. And finally, we will be sharing some of the concrete measures that governments and other partners, public or private, have or can put in place to drive women's employment, entrepreneurship, and leadership. We have a panel of seasoned tourism policymakers and practitioners who will share with us their experiences of how the tourism sector in their respective countries have addressed issues of gender equality in order to provide greater opportunities for women's empowerment. We have Dr. Nashwa Talat, who, as Basma mentioned, is advisor on sustainable tourism affairs to the Minister of Tourism and Antiquities in Egypt, as well as the head of equal opportunities at the ministry. Dr. Nashwa is also Dean of Al Elson Higher Institute for Tourism and Hotels and part of the Faculty of Tourism and Hotel Management at Sadat City University. Dr. Talat began her career in tourism as a senior tour operator. Our second panelist is Ms. Ansam Malkawi, who is advisor to the Minister of Tourism and Antiquities in Jordan and Director of Institutional Development. Ansam also oversees the gender portfolio at the ministry, which looks at mainstreaming gender equality in national tourism policies. She has been with the ministry over the past 20 years and has served in a range of different capacities, including as Director of Workforce Development and Capacity Building, as well as Director of Tourism in different governments throughout Jordan. Finally, we have Ms. Abir Abu Sulaiman, whose passion for history and heritage led her to a career in tourism. She has been a tour guide since 1999, and in 2018 became the first female licensed tour guide in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Abir is also a founding member of the Heart of Jeddah, an initiative that aims to revive the city's historical areas and serves as a member of the advisory board of the Tourism College at King Abdulaziz University. So a warm virtual welcome to our panelists. During the first part of this webinar, I will be engaging the panelists on a set of 3 questions, where each one will have 2 minutes to respond before moving on to the next question. At the end of the panel discussion, we will host a Q&A session with the audience. The audience will be able to submit questions throughout the webinar, and we encourage you to do so. We'll just take the questions at the end, however. If you have joined by Zoom, you can submit questions via the Q&A function. And if you have joined via YouTube live streaming, you can send your questions through chat. So to start our discussion, I'd like each panelist to draw on their long experiences in the tourism sector and their own national context to tell us what they consider to be some of the key factors that contribute or have contributed to gender equality and women's empowerment in tourism. Dr. Nashwa, would you like to please start us off?
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my pleasure to participate in such an important webinar that sheds light on the key factors and challenges that contribute to women empowerment in the tourism sector in the Middle East. Actually, there are some factors that support gender equality in the Egyptian tourism sector. From my point of view, the most important is that the Egyptian government pays an exceptional attention to women empowerment in all fields. By 2017, the government launched the National Strategy for the Women Empowerment for the Egyptian Women 2030. The vision of this strategy states by 2030, the Egyptian woman will become a major player in achieving sustainable development in the country. That guarantees all the rights that is included in the Constitution without any discrimination. The pillars of this strategy depend on 4 pillars. The first pillar is the political empowerment and leadership promotion, economic empowerment, social empowerment, and protection. So for the first time in Egypt, 25% of the ministers in the government are women, 8 ministers and 2 vice ministers. So accordingly, there are a number of laws that guarantee women's rights at work, women's family life and maternity that do not affect her right to keep her job. Also, males and females have an equal right to obtain university and postgraduate education, and equal right to get loans that enable them to start tourism business without any discrimination. By 2018, the Ministry of Tourism launched a program that's called Structural Reform Program for development of the tourism sector. This program—
Dr. Nashwa?
Excuse me?
If you allow me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would just like to welcome His Excellency, the Saudi Ambassador in Spain, Ambassador Azam Al-Gain. It's a great honor to have you with us today. Thank you. Go on, Dr. Nashwa. I'm really sorry.
Okay, yeah, I was speaking about the last point I want to speak about, that the Ministry of Tourism has launched the structure reform program. It has a separate pillar that was included in the program for promoting the women's economic empowerment by increasing female workforce in tourism sector. And also the women's work in tourism has become more acceptable by society. Not to that extent that we wish, but it has become more acceptable by the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nashwa. I think you highlight a very, very important point, and that's the importance of having national commitment and enabling policy and legislative frameworks to support women in tourism. Ansam, would you like to build or add to that from the Jordan experience? Ansam, you're muted.
Thank you, and I'm glad to share this webinar, especially for this. We believe that it's one of the most issues we need to deal and to participate in deeply and find how to develop this kind of issues. Thank you for inviting me to the webinar. And as we are all aware, the majority of the tourism, I'll start to talk in general and to arrive to Jordan, because maybe we are not too, we are optimistic, but we don't have the large numbers as my colleague from Egypt mentioned. So I'll start from the global and then back to Jordan. So as we are all aware, the majority of tourism workforce around the world is female, which is 54% of people employed in tourism as women. However, the proportion of women engaged in tourism in the Middle East is significantly lower compared to the world region. In Jordan, we might have one of the lowest number, as we have only 9% of employees are women in tourism. This might be explained by social and cultural norms, gender stereotyping, unrecognized and unpaid care, and domestic work, limited access to and control over resources. As we are also aware, the tourism sector is one with a diverse range of occupations and subsector for people to seek employment, which can make it easier for individuals of different qualifications to seek employment. Tourism is an important economic sector and source for revenue for Jordan, contributing up to 13% of the country's GDP. This sector is, during the pre-COVID, was experiencing a large amount of growth, meaning more jobs opening and expansion in opportunities for women and youth to enter the workforce. We are hopeful this trend will continue as the sector reopens and recovers in the coming year. At this point, we notice, I will mention that we don't have enough numbers and we don't have many documentations, but checking the people who are affected by COVID-19, the women were affected more than men. Women in Jordan enjoy high education attainment level. Jordan has one of the highest literacy rate for women and enjoy high secondary and higher education attainment levels. Strong access to education can support their access employment, especially in the tourism sector. Now, we are preparing a project aims to motivate business incubators for women entrepreneurs in tourism, especially in the governorate. And this, part of it is similar what Ms. Basma mentioned with our partners, UNWTO, UN Women, and GIZ. Any project access to finance, always we target women in the governorate. It is clear that increase of women-led business in supply chain and distributors, we notice the difference from year to year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansam. And the project that you're implementing or planning to implement at community level, I think is important. I think it's important when promoting gender equality and women's empowerment in tourism to also factor in supporting women at the community level. That was actually a rich area when producing the report, the regional report. It was a very rich area of activity and a great platform for women's economic empowerment. Abia, turning to you, please tell us what some of the key factors that have enabled your career and other women's careers in tourism in Saudi Arabia.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor for me to participate in this great webinar. As you've mentioned, Ms. Ghada, at the beginning, this is not a Middle East issues, it's a global issues. But thanks to all the efforts done by the governments, by the UNWTO, numbers are increasing, things are getting better. So according to the UNTWO report on women, there are 5 main focus areas that contribute to gender equality and women empowerment, which are employment, entrepreneurship, leadership, education, community. Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia is really focusing on these 5 areas. The tourism provides decent work for women, entrepreneurship, the women tourism business have increased really in big numbers since 2019. I have to mention that Saudi Arabia is, the numbers are not really modest comparing to a country that just started in 2019. We had this beautiful opening and we said to the world, welcome to Saudi Arabia. So when we talk especially in the tourism domain, we have to put into consideration that real tourism started in Saudi Arabia in 2019. Before that, we had millions of people coming to perform religious rituals, but not tourism as it is. So now we are ensuring that women are represented and contributing to the growth of the country, especially in the tourism sector. And recently, in 2018, women were able to have license as a tourist guide. And we have the Saudi Tour Guides Association, which is the biggest partner in this beautiful sector in the tourism, that have licensed 149 ladies to be accredited and licensed in the different region, not only the big cities of Saudi Arabia. It also trained 4 ladies to conduct training the trainers. I am one of these 4 ladies. And also I'm talking about the Saudi Tour Guide Association, STGA. And also it partnered with the University of Noura bint Abdul Rahman, which is the largest university for female in the world. The university is supporting tour guides to acquire essential skill language in the job. And also the association is looking to create links with regional and international network for women tour guides to facilitate, to share their experience, knowledge, so on. In addition, the Saudi Tour Guide Association values women's greater involvement in decision-making. So in the last election to have the board member, we had 3 ladies elected in the board out of 10 to help to ensure that decisions are to better reflect the priorities and issues for Saudi women tour guides. And in 2018, we had the Saudi women were able to be organizers, not only tour guides. And also there are always numbers, they reflect better. So according to the Saudi Human Capital Development Programs, we have beautiful percentage of ladies. For example, in 2021, we had 46% of the female that are trainees in the tourism sectors. We had 67, yes.
Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off as we're trying to keep to the time.
No.
But thank you very much for your intervention, and a takeaway that took from your presentation was the importance of introducing women in traditionally male-dominated spaces in order to kind of normalize the situation. That's important. Before I move on to the second question, I just wanted to again remind the audience that you are welcome to submit questions throughout the webinar. Via Zoom, it's through the Q&A function, and the YouTube live streaming, it's through the chat. Okay, so moving on to the second question, and this time, Ansam, we will begin with you. Tell us a little bit about the key challenges to gender equality and women's empowerment in the sector. Ansam, you're still muted.
Sorry. Okay. Talking about women labor force participation rate is amongst the lowest in the region. So talking about the challenges, maybe this is the first one. Estimated at around, if we are talking about the region, 16%. Their participation in the tourism hospitality sector is similarly low. Women who are employed in the tourism and hospitality sector tend to be employed in lower paying and even perform a large amount of informal or unpaid work in family tourism business. Women in tourism sector make up a majority of informal and casual roles, which are much more precious and are the first to lose employment due to the pandemic that we face. Women in tourism are seldom employed in decision-making position despite high levels of experience and high education attainment, including at the university levels. This means that there are few women in decision-making position in the sector. We are all aware of the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic has imposed on the tourism sector as a whole, especially restrictions on mobility that have made tourism almost impossible for the better part of the last 2 years. This has caused a lot of tourism and hospitality outlets to have to let go employees. Evidences from around the world has proven that women's economic and productive lives were disparate much more significantly than the men. A higher proportion of women, especially those in formal, precious jobs, lost their employment. Women have had shoulder a bigger responsibility in the household compared to men. This can make it more challenging for women to enter the workforce post-COVID. The same challenges that can hinder women's workforce participation across the board apply to tourism and hospitality sector and should be considered so such. This can include the need of safe, affordable, and accessible transportation infrastructure for women to seek the employment outside the household, the need for affordable child care service for women to be able to seek employment outside the household. In Jordan, this can also include legal or sociocultural barriers that may prohibit women from seeking employment in specific sectors, like the civil sectors. So we find that it is, as all mentioned, it is global, it's in the Middle East, but maybe in Jordan, we face it, especially for the numbers. And in the contrary, if we are talking, maybe we have, as my colleague from Egypt, we have for the last 10 years, we have 5 ministers of tourism, they are women. As decision maker, we can use this as benefit for us, but to be honest, talking about the private sector, most of the women are working in the what we call a family business in tourism, and this is without a salary, or we can't consider it as a specific or organized business for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansam. Dr. Najwa, how do these challenges compare to the context in Egypt? Dr. Nashwa, you're muted.
Okay, fine. Okay, I think the main challenge is a community awareness, because despite of the improvement of the level of community awareness regarding tourism, working in tourism, large percentage of men still refuse to let their wives or daughters to work in tourism sector. Maybe because of inflexible work hours and dealing with people from different cultures, and also because most of the Egyptian tourist destinations are located in distant governorates, which requires workers to move and live there. It is difficult for females to adapt to this, especially those who are married or raising children. So this is one of the main challenges in the community. And also, although there are successful models in the private sector that seeks to empower women in the field of tourism, like, for example, Marriott, who has the first lady general manager, many hotels and tourism companies still don't prefer to hire women because of their family responsibilities and some rights during their childcare. I think also there is low entrepreneurial tendencies and desire to work in tourism sector among female students in faculties of tourism and hotels. Maybe for the lack of confidence or maybe for social reasons. Also, the lack of capital and the ability to take risks may hinder many women from initiating their own business. So I think this is the main key challenges to gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nashwa. I think both you and Ansam highlighted the issue of the difficulty women face in reconciling their work and family obligations as a key barrier to their entry in the tourism sector. And still the prevailing gender norms that still place a primacy on women's roles as mothers and caregivers. And I think another challenge that you presented was also the generally poor image of tourism that may deter women from joining the sector, and and also maybe workplace policies are not very inclusive or as understanding of or accommodating of women's roles. So women often feel that they have to choose. So Abiyat, given your experience, and certainly before 2018, before you became a licensed tour guide, what were some of the key challenges then and now?
I agree first with Dr. Nashwa and Mrs. Ansam that being a mother, this is maybe the biggest challenge to be a worker, a mother, so which men maybe do not face. One of the, maybe it was different in Saudi Arabia because being a tour guide was a male domain, if I may say, although it was not written as a law, but this is what was in common. So it was not something familiar to see a lady tour guide, although my starting at the beginning was just to help the registration of historical Jeddah as a UNESCO site. But I have to say that Saudi Arabia has addressed gender equality and women's empowerment through a comprehensive policy approach to help diminishing and decreasing. We have barriers to women's employment, including family work conciliation and transport issues. While you're saying before 2018, we had a problem in the transportation, which doesn't exist anymore. The number of women employment in Saudi Arabia in general was really modest comparing to men. So this number has increased between 2016 to 2019 by 5%. And we have a wonderful vision, 2030, that aims to increase the women employment to 30%, and we are on that track. So now the time is to implement greater and smarter policies backed by initiatives that addresses women's limitation to entering and succeeding in the workforce. We need, for example, affordable children care services everywhere, and also to increase the initiatives for the women owning SMEs. I think these factors will really help to increase women empowerment and to decrease women gender equality.
Thank you, Abir. And that's a great segue to our final round, our final question. So the final question is, what are some of the concrete measures that have been taken or are needed, whether they be policies, program actions, or partnerships, to respond to gender inequalities in tourism? Abir, I don't know if you want to kind of continue on your train of thought.
Thank you, Ms. Ghada, especially that I mentioned the Saudi Vision 2030, because this vision aims to create a vibrant society and to the empowerment of women. The vision focuses on having other resources than the oil. The most important sector is tourism. So when we say that the vision lays on the tourism, we say men and women have to work together in order to achieve this beautiful target. So there is something very nice in the report of Women, Business and Law in 2020. They put Saudi Arabia among the first countries that ranked in the progress of women in the field of gender equality. So these numbers are really giving us positive vibes to continue. We have big reforms to make the employment less in the women, and we've seen it decreased 6%. According to the General Authority of Statistics, the unemployment of Saudi women has decreased. So this is a good indicator. We have the specialist has to support the empowerment of women to start and run their own businesses. We have to put also laws for discrimination on basis of gender for jobs, and to access to financial services, they are prohibited. So whenever you have an announcement for job, you cannot say it's for male or female. So this is prohibited in Saudi Arabia. And this, I believe, it's a very good step to have gender equality. We have to protect, there is also laws to protect female employees from dismissal. We've seen, in, as my colleagues have mentioned, COVID-19 have a strong impact, but there is no dismissal for ladies, for female employees during pregnancy and maternity leave. So this is something we have to take into consideration. And now we have women who can vote and run municipal elections. This is maybe done in other countries, but it's new for us. I believe that if we continue in developing training programs for women in the industry, and we have to maybe redefine tourism gender balance. This redefinition can help a lot to put the two genders on an equality base for the rest of the industry, especially now the world is a global village. Everyone is looking to come to Saudi Arabia. So we have to really define a gender balance to improve gender-based data collection for better measurement. If I may,
last point.
yes, the 5 points, the focus main area of the WTO, the employment, leadership, entrepreneurship, community, education. We have to provide equal opportunities on all these 5 sectors. Believe me, next webinar will be talking about better opportunities and better future for women in the Middle East in the tourism sector.
Thank you very much. Ansam, would you care to tell us what concrete measures are needed?
I will start with the most problem that we face is the, let me say, the research and the figures. So strengthening national capacity to research and report on gender degradation, tourism data, and using to promote gender equality and women empowerment is crucial to achieve better target gender equality investigation in the sector, investment, sorry, in the sector. And this is what we are now preparing to our working on to make a database to collect and to make it as a dashboard for not only for tourism, and we have a special portfolio for gender research and reports. Entrepreneurship, one opportunity to strengthen women's participation in workforce, including in the tourism and hospitality sector. Micro, small, and medium-sized entrepreneurs are the major job creators within the tourism sector. There are opportunities for women to be entrepreneurs in this sector in traditional occupations, such as the handicraft and food, and this is clear for all the region, but even this is growing. Legislation in Jordan that has made it easier for individuals to register home-based businesses is one step toward fostering an ecosystem that inclusive of women entrepreneurs and women interested in entering the workforce. We believe that women can play a leading role in the digital transformation of the tourism and hospitality sector, as digital platform and technologies are the future for tourism. One of the projects that we are already started after the COVID-19 pandemic is creating a handicraft platform to market products from handicraft shops and those who produce at home. And when we are talking at the majority of the people who are producing or the products from home, they are ladies. It is important that women have access to the skills and competencies that they need in order not only to enter the economic cycle, but to enter digital spaces as well to achieve economic inclusion. Strengthening women access to and use technology can create new opportunities for women innovation and empowerment. This can also create the tourism and hospitality new jobs for women in necessary occupations as digitalizations come to play in tourism and hospitality sector. Lastly, the last point, sorry, I'll talk about the public-private partnership, which is the crucial to support the overall recovery of the sector and its growth moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansam, and thank you, Abir, before. I think just to flag a few important points that you both raised, which was about removing or amending any laws or policies that discriminate, however directly or inadvertently against women, is a concrete measure. The need for better workplace policies, and I think that was raised in the previous question. But also, Ansam, I'd like to also thank you for raising the whole issue of digitalization, because I think even moving forward in education and in the training of like the workforce of the future, the workforce also needs to have the skills for the future. In order to not be left behind. So I thank you for raising that very important point. Dr. Nashwa, we will end with you on concrete measures that have been taken or are still needed. Dr. Nashwa, you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Some concrete measures that have been taken by the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities regarding gender inequality. We always work together with the National Council for Women. Equal Opportunities Unit has been established with a ministerial decree. It aims to achieve the sub-goals of the Egyptian Women's Strategy 2030 in the field of tourism, the aim of this unit. Also, the unit cooperates and coordinates with the National Council for Women and other ministries to ensure the implementation of the long-term goals of the strategy. We are also preparing for a workshop entitled Creating a Safe Work Environment that is free from all forms of violence for women in the tourism sector. It targets the male and female working in the Ministry of Tourism and all its associations. Members of the Equal Opportunities Unit have been encouraged to participate in the electronic trainings, gender statistics held by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. And one of the members got the certificate. 10 female employees were selected to participate in the training program for women leaders to obtain the International Business Driving License, which is organized by the National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development. A hotline is dedicated to receive women's complaints. This is very important to receive the women's complaint. There is a Gender Seal initiative, which was launched in cooperation with the Egyptian Tourism Federation and UNDP and National Council for Women. The company or the hotel will be committed to implement a gender equality action plan in order to obtain official governmental recognition and Gender Seal certificate. Also, there is one of the important projects that we have started, is a 2-year project, which is financed by the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, the creation of safe and equal work environment for women in the tourism sector of Egypt. This project aims to increase the percentage of women participating in the Egyptian tourism sector. It also enables women to confront gender inequalities, increase women's income from tourism sector, reduce women abandonment rates of work, improve the image of women's work in the sector. This is the actions that have been taken. For the measurements to be taken, I totally agree with Ms. Abir and Ms. Ansam for the action of building partnerships with private sector to achieve the goal of women empowerment and raising the awareness more and more for the societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nashwa. Yes, the partnerships with the private sector are very important since the private sector is a big player in the tourism space. But I also appreciated the fact that you highlighted partnerships even within government, especially the partnership that the Ministry of Tourism has with the National Council on Women. So of course, the tourism sector alone cannot address gender equality on its own. And so, you know, partnerships are very crucial for that. So with that, I will conclude this session, and I'd like to thank the panelists for their for lending their expertise and experiences to today's insightful discussion. So if we can just give a moment of silent applause to our panelists for their great interventions. And now I will turn to my colleagues at UNWTO to see what has come by way of questions from the audience.
Yes, hello, Gada. We have had quite a few. Thank you to everybody for sending your questions through on the chat and the Q&A function on Zoom. We'll get straight in because we've had quite a few. So the first one to come in was from Maha. Thank you very much. She asks, as tourism recovers, what policies are being implemented to make sure women are involved and fully a full part of the recovery from COVID-19? And if we might also take this jointly with a question from Zina, who asks about national policies in light of the increase in gender-based violence during the COVID-19 pandemic. What policies are being put in place to combat gender-based violence? So the question to the panelists, the joint question then is, what policies are being implemented to ensure women are an integral part of the recovery from COVID, the pandemic in tourism, and to combat gender-based violence in the sector? Thank you.
Should I exercise the prerogative of the moderator to call on Dr. Neshwa? Would you like to take that question?
Okay. One of the actions that there is a hotline dedicated to receive women's complaints regarding any violence, any unsafe work environment. So it's, I think it was a very added value for the actions that have been done during the last time, and supporting women for this, the project we have launched lately for the Spanish program, the creation of safe and equal work environment. It aims to train the students of faculties of tourism and hotels, and also women and men working in the field of tourism. So we are not targeting women only for the training and awareness. We are targeting both of them. But as for the actions that has been done during the pandemic, there were a lot of actions that were done to support the industry as a whole, supporting men and women. So there was equal opportunities for women to take any advantage from the policies that have been approved during the pandemic. So there were equal opportunities for them both. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neshwa. Ansam, would you like to also comment from your side?
Thank you. I'll continue what my colleague mentioned, and I'll take the part of tourism and the policies that after the pandemic. One of them that now we are preparing or creating the Jordan tourism strategy, and the specific and special and clear pillar is for women inclusion and women empowerment, and this strategy will be launched soon. Also talking about tourism and the effect of pandemic, as we know that affect all the sector in general. And one of the solution for tourism also in general, it was the domestic tourism, and we have a national program which is Urdunna Jannah. It is for domestic, and it is all over Jordan, all the sites and the governorate, and choosing the service providers and choosing the destination to be visit. We do our best that to find or to catch women during this trail. So, and the other thing, dealing with women equal with the men, that during within the government action after the pandemic, of course there are many actions were taken financially and economically, and during that we try not to say that to reach the woman, but be careful that women and men got the solution and get the benefit of this government action. Thank you.
Thanks, Ansam. Abir, did you want to add
Yes, my colleagues have mentioned what happened in Saudi Arabia. We had help from the government for those who had some damages, not some, most of the people had damages in their businesses due to the COVID. So the government helped financially, but then they had a beautiful initiative called 100,000 job. Most of them are in the tourism sector, for female and male, and the number of female were bigger than the male applying for these jobs.
Thank you, Abir. Ben, do we have, I think we might have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Yes, okay, we'll get straight in. Thank you to Muayyad for the question. So the next one is, how do the panelists see the involvement of civil society organizations in the development of tourism, specifically with a focus on the protection of women working in the sector or coming as tourists? So obviously very related to the recommendations of the regional report there. Ghada, I'll pass back to you. So the question, how do panelists see the involvement of civil society organizations and gender rights groups in the development of tourism for the protection of women?
Ansam, would you like to start us off with this question?
I think it's clear their role and the importance of involving them, or their involvement of the women, especially if I want to give an example that the agri-tourism in Jordan, now it's flourished, and majority of them are ladies from women, and most of them also trained and empowered by the civil organizations. So this helps us, to be honest, if I want to speak specific about the agri-tourism, but in general, yes, they help in the training, and they can reach the woman in simple way. Let me say it in this way: they can reach women in all governorate, and we have a good relation also with these NGOs or organizations. So I think we have a good partnership, especially that we have the same objective for local communities empowerment, and especially the women empowerment.
Thank you, Ansam. And Dr. Nashwa, how is the ministry engaging with civil society organizations in the promotion of women in tourism?
I totally agree with Ms. Ansam that there is an important role for the civil organizations in supporting women in tourism, especially that they actually can reach women in a very, very simple way. So they can do some activities that cannot be done, or they can reach women whom cannot be reached by the ministries or the official bodies. So working together with the civil organizations is very, very important, especially in capacity building for the women in local areas and local communities. Thank you.
Abir, would you like to contribute to?
Yes, please. The Civil Association is a very important partner with the governmental one. For example, during the epidemic, we had a lot of free online courses, especially in the tourism domain, whether by the government, which is the Ministry of Tourism, or whether by the Saudi Tour Guide Association, or MISC, for example, Foundation, who gave a lot of free online courses, very professional in the domain of tourism. Some of them ended up by a job opportunity. So the Civil Association is always the important backbone for the community.
Thank you. at time, and I'm looking to my colleagues at UNWTO to see if we can take one more question, or
yes, yeah. We have a question from Linda. She's asking if there are any follow-up steps or any plan for joint cooperation.
on anything specifically, joint cooperation?
No, in general.
Well,
any follow-up, for example, for the report or any next editions, maybe?
yeah. Well, here I'm going to ask Ansam, because I think, you know, as Basma mentioned at the beginning, is partnering with UNWTO and UN Women and GIZ, and perhaps some others, to implement some of the recommendations of the report. So I don't know, Ansam, if you wanted to say a little bit more about that initiative.
Maybe not in details, because it is an initiative and we just started, but the idea is, as we all agree, to fill the gaps at the beginning, and then with the partners we'll have 10 businesses to be trained and to help them for the entrepreneurship. We just start with GIZ and the UNWTO to put the criteria to choose these businesses, and also we'll have a workshop for awareness, because as to get benefit for people as much as we can, the 10 businesses will have one-to-one training or entrepreneurship to help them. But we have a huge workshop as awareness and the training for larger number, and we'll do our best, as we always care about to have women from different governorate, because we believe that most of the involvement of women in tourism as a small and medium projects, it's in the governorate, and this is what we need to support and to help, to be honest. This part I can mention now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I believe we've reached our time. It was an hour webinar. So I will conclude the proceedings. The recording will be available on the UNWTO website. And again, just a big thank you to our panelists and to UNWTO for organizing this important webinar. And I think this important topic, because you know, women in tourism in the Middle East is, you know, there's a spotlight on it. There's a recent spotlight on it, and I think it holds really great potential to you know, to drive sustainable, inclusive development forward. So thank you all once again.
Okay, thank you, Ghada. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time, for your participation, for your comments, for your excellent and fruitful discussions. We had today over 60 minutes. As we have been boosting women's participation in tourism in the Middle East, we will rely on also, and we're looking forward also for greater and smarter policies and resource incentives and investment to catalyze direct and indirect opportunities for women's employment, entrepreneurship, education, training, leadership, and decision-making, plus community development in general. The presence and visibility of women in leadership positions is vital to help motivate women to advance in their careers, especially that are relevant to tourism or direct jobs in tourism. I would also like to encourage you to download and read UNWTO's report on women in tourism, which is available with the other relevant links we just posted on our UNWTO e-library, and they're for free. Also, we would like to hear back from you on what on your stories after implementing the recommendations mentioned in the report. We can't, this is our story together, this is our mission together. And with all of us working together, we will, of course, move forward in this sector, in this industry, to empower women and the society also in general. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon in our future webinars. May you have a wonderful day. مع السلامة.
Thank you.